This episode of Healthy Home Hacks is sponsored by the Building Biology Institute. To learn more about creating indoor environments that support health and wellness, visit their free resources at buildingbiologyinstitute.org.
How would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, biobiologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
I am lucky. Well, I was. For over 25 years, my mother-in-law and my stepdad lived on the gorgeous big island of Hawaii. But shortly after Lisa and I had our tropical I-dos there, we voyaged across the Pacific Ocean for a visit. Because, of course we wanted to be there. So upon arrival, we noticed they had this new fish tank that was donating their open-aired, ocean-viewed, breezy living room. And at first glance, it was a blue oasis with the newest addition of a Nemo-like fish. But after a day, we started noticing the cute little clownfish was getting nipped at, like again and again. It was torturous to watch. So we said, like Free Willy, we gotta free this fish. He's clearly being bullied. So my stepdad, big guy, he got a large white bucket, filled it up with salt water to house the fish overnight so he wouldn't be in the same tank as those bullies. When I woke up early that morning, I headed to the kitchen to make a smoothie. I almost stepped on this little guy. He had literally jumped over a foot out of the bucket, and I kid you not, out of the bucket, he landed on the floor, and I screamed, "Charlie!" That's my father-in-law. A stout Hawaiian man, he came rushing out. The fish wasn't breathing. We thought he was dead. I was like heartbroken. I was like, "Charlie," he said, "to stand back." He proceeded to pick up little Nemo and place him back in the bucket. His large Hawaiian hands held the tiny little Nemo fish by the tail and started pulling him backward against the water, letting the salt water fill Nemo's lungs. I kind of thought, he lost his mind. This fish is lifeless. It's not coming back. But suddenly, there was movement. The fish started breathing. It was moving. It was a miracle that only a Hawaiian kahuna could create. And later, we took Nemo in a little baggie down to the ocean to release him back into his natural habitat. The 20-minute drive felt like hours. As we stepped across lava rocks into the tide pools, we felt like this was the perfect spot to allow Nemo to get his footing, or finning, I should say, finning. When he got out into the fresh water, he shimmered so bright and iridescent against the blue sea. We watched him swim out to freedom and back into his natural habitat where he can now thrive. Many of us can relate to Nemo in that we are so far removed from our natural surroundings, especially those living in densely populated cities, where foliage, mountains, waterways, and greenery are virtually non-existent. Many modern dwellers today have traded hills for high-rises, daffodils for doormen, and what has followed suit are unhealthy living spaces and ultimately sickness, poor health, and a dependency on medication just to survive. Someone who understands this well is our special guest. Today, we are thrilled to have fellow building biologist, published author, and architect, Paula Baker-Laporte.
Paula is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects and a certified building biologist. Her architectural practice is focused on the creation of environmentally sound and health-enhancing architecture, working with traditional, nature-based systems. Paula also serves as a consultant on the health aspects of building throughout North America. She's been an instructor for the Building Biology Institute since 2006. Her published books include Prescriptions for a Healthy House, now in its third edition, and 2 books with her husband and co-author, Robert Laporte, EcoNest, Creating Sustainable Sanctuaries of Clay and Timber, and the EcoNest Home. Welcome to the show, Paula.
Welcome, Paula.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Paula, what is ventilation and should we be concerned about it?
Human beings need fresh air. And if our homes aren't allowing enough fresh air to come in, we should be concerned.
Paula and her husband build homes, and she's sitting in a home that they built. And I'm looking at the gorgeous walls and just the beautiful natural materials that you've used.
Well, our home is, we have mass walls. And when you have mass walls, one of the things that people notice is there's an evenness of temperature. So that allows us, if we want to open doors and windows and ventilate naturally any time of the year. Because, if you take a conventionally built stick frame home and did the same, the temperature would either rise or drop or pick up all the humidity or dryness or whatever from outside and make the inside uncomfortable very quickly. We have employed many climate-based strategies that allow us to maximize natural ventilation. Having said that, there's also a role for mechanical ventilation in any modern home now.
And by mass walls, you're talking about, if I recall, like they're very thick, right? They're about a foot thick.
That's correct. Yeah, our walls of our home are made out of a straw and clay mixture. But there, we've worked with many other systems. I've done adobe homes and autoclave concrete homes and wood insulated homes. So there are many different ways to get the mass effect. It's just not as common in North America as it is in Europe and Asia. And in fact, in the rest of the world. Yeah.
And there's no insulation in your buildings, right? There's no fiberglass.
Well, we always need some sort of insulation in the roofing, and the walls themselves, the combination of clay and straw are what we call a dynamic insulation. So it's a combination of insulation and mass that, doesn't have the same kind of R values that people are getting with synthetic materials like sprayed foam.
Mm-hmm. Ron and I had the pleasure of visiting your home when you lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I just remember the feeling, the comfort, as soon as you walked in. And we got there in the afternoon and we stayed till the evening. It even rained that day. You had this big, beautiful fireplace in the middle of the open-aired room, the open space, and it heated the entire environment. It was so comfortable. You had the meditation room with the gorgeous round window and the sliding soji doors. And I was like, I need to live in this house.
It truly is, for at least most of us North Americans, and I can remember my first experience of walking into an all-natural home. And it's such an unfamiliar experience to us to have walked from nature, opened a door, and walked back into nature. And that is the building biology ideal, is not to leave nature behind just because we've come indoors.
Yeah, we are so far removed from that.
We are.
We live in Orange County. And if you know the Orange County housewives, some of them live not in our exact neighborhood, but we passed their house on our way down to the beach. One of them, gosh, I forget how many square feet the one home was up on the hill. 25,000 square feet, a 25,000 square foot home. And I saw pictures of it as it was being built. I mean, this home has like special ice cube makers that make square ice cubes and a hair salon and elevators, you name it, probably movie theaters and who knows. But they used pink fiberglass insulation. And I remember seeing the photos and thinking, wow, you've got that much money to build a dream home. And it was like so much about the external and nothing integrated into the material, even going to like a denim insulation or something more natural. It was really surprising.
The happy news is there are many, many ways we can improve any type of home. And the sad news is that most people going into building a home don't know enough to ask for what we know they really need.
Right. It's kind of in that system. So Paula, what happens to a home and the people living in the home if there isn't enough ventilation?
Well, imagine sending your kids to play in a plastic bag.
Okay.
Does not sound fun.
Right? You probably wouldn't choose to do that. And yet, essentially, we build houses as if they were a giant plastic bag. We try to block out nature, and then we let in mechanically as much as we think we may need. And It's interesting that ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, etc. engineers, heating, cooling, air conditioning engineers, has set standards over the years for how much air exchange a home should have. And that number keeps going up. They keep discovering maybe we need more and more. Now, if you're a single person living in a 25,000 square foot home, you're probably not going to deplete your carbon dioxide in a hurry. If you're,
so for that one person listening, you're okay.
If you're living in a compact, tight, very much plastic bag type construction home, and you've got 4 kids and everyone is showering and you're cooking all the time, and maybe someone has a model plane hobby, gluing up in another room, etc., on, you better pay a lot of attention, because not only are the occupants going to lose health because they don't have enough fresh air, but the building itself needs air exchange so it doesn't get moldy. And as you probably know, mold in buildings is a serious and huge problem all over the country through all climate zones.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just in the South or, the high humid areas, but all it takes is a leak or, a food source and the right temperature, and it's got a perfect environment for mold.
Right.
Well, how much is enough, Paula? So I remember you mentioned, or actually it was in your book, I think the first edition, you have 4 editions, by the way. That is fantastic.
Yes, congratulations.
One is in progress. I can't wait to get it
that's impressive.
Yeah, impressive. Well, I remember something written where it said the average air exchange of a home should be, once every hour, but as of late, it's been once every 5 hours is the average air exchange where clean air comes in and out completely, right? Is that still the case? What is enough?
As I was explaining the last example, it depends. And I think the point when we were in the book was that homes used to be very leaky, so they sucked a lot of air exchange in. That is not an ideal way to get your air exchange, but people were getting enough air. The homes were not particularly comfortable. They were drafty. So we've made huge advances in how to make homes less drafty. And we really do want to know where the air is coming from. We don't want air leaking in through walls that might have mold in them or have fiberglass insulation that has old formaldehyde in it or mouse droppings or you name it. You want to know where the air is coming from. There's a lot of green building now, and it's very popular. And usually those homes are very tight, airtight, which can be a good thing. And in order to compensate and make sure the occupants are getting the right amount of air, they're installing mechanical ventilation. And you may have heard of HRVs and ERVs.
Can you say what that is, an HRV and an ERV? Okay.
HRV is a mechanical heat recovery ventilator. So it ensures that fresh air is coming into the house and that air is being exhausted out of the house, and it's tempering the outside air with the temperature of the indoor air as they pass in 2 separate streams in a box. So it's a way of getting fresh air without the energy penalty of opening windows when it's cold or humid or too hot. And ERV is about the same thing, but it also has a way to capture moisture and exchange it too. So in certain environments, one is more recommended, and in other environments, the other. But that is the kind of the state-of-the-art way that ventilation is happening in tight, conventionally built green buildings that are winning the awards these days.
Oh, gotcha. Wow. Okay, so cost-wise compared to a traditional HVAC system, what percentage higher would one of those be?
Well, it's not necessarily a replacement for HVAC. And some HVAC systems are designed to bring in fresh air, but it can be a standalone addition to a home or a ducted in addition to a home.
Okay.
And some of them have a certain amount of filtration too. Now, all of this type of air exchange is based on an idea that the outside air is better than the indoor air. However, I don't know if you experienced, I'm sure you have in the LA area, some of the smoke events we've been having on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so most people who had this kind of filtration had to shut it off because they were just bringing smoke into the house. So,
wow. Right.
So we have to rethink that.
Yeah. Allergies, someone with a lot of allergies, environmental allergies, that would be an issue unless the filtration system was maximum or you had a really good filtration system, a whole house filtration attached to that.
So an HRV can have filtration elements, or it can have add-ons for filtration. And certainly, I have used them, especially in housing. I work with a lot of people who have special environmental needs. So people who are allergic to what's outside or have to shelter at home and need a lot more exchange and filtration. It's a solution I depend on.
So you do use that in certain situations?
I do, but there's always unintended consequences with each piece of non-natural we bring into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the building biology approach, if I could sum it up, is create buildings that are self-sufficient and then bring in technology as an enhancement. Instead, what we see is a lot of buildings are hooked up to life support. So if the power went out, well, we've seen this. If the power goes out in a place like Phoenix, Arizona, or somewhere with extreme climate, the houses that are built by conventional construction become uninhabitable very quickly.
Yeah, you can see that. Gosh, that we've had blackouts here in California. I'm sure we've all experienced them. And even just a simple, quick blackout, you realize like how dependent on these systems that you are, everything. And the more and more technologically advanced we get, we're just getting more into that. We're so dependent on everything, right? Everything's a computer too, on top of that, so everything's based on a computer system.
Real quick question. So the straw clay walls of your home, right? They allow the home to breathe better naturally in a way. What happens when there's a heavy amount of smoke in your neighborhood? What would happen to the walls of your home in that scenario?
Okay, well, you brought up two great things that I would love to talk about, Ron. And the first one is this whole term. If I could rename one term that's gotten into the healthy home and building biology translations from other language, it's the term breathability. And when we talk about breathability of a wall system, which is a building biology ideal, we're not talking about its ability to exchange air. We're talking about breathability in the same way that our skin is a breathable organ. We know we can put a dermal patch on it and take medication in through our skin. And our skin, if we're too hot, it can put off, just make water appear from inside of us and create a whole evaporative cooling system over our whole body. If we're too cold, we get goosebumps and our hair stands on end, so we get a whole insulation pocket around our body. Ideally, we would want our building envelope to be breathable in the way our skin is breathable, to be interacting with nature on our own terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, great description.
I was just so impressed the first time I saw your home, and Lisa mentioned this earlier in New Mexico. I couldn't get past the concept of like that was clay straw. And I know you were in a climate that probably is more conducive, and that probably plays a big factor into making that kind of home because you were in a dry climate area. It doesn't rain that often, but you certainly had a level of protection because of the roofing that it created just the perfect dwelling for you and your husband.
Right. The big secret that no one's talking about is if you go back 100 or 150 years ago, every single region in this country, along with the rest of the world, knew how to build for their existing climate. So they were self-sufficient because there was no technology to tap into. I'm not a Luddite. Technology is allowing us to have this conversation at a distance, and technology has allowed us to become more comfortable in our homes. But at what expense?
Yeah, if we can't, just like getting toxins out of our body, we need that. We need those toxins getting out of our home too.
Yes.
So circling back with ventilation, how does building biology differ from conventional wisdom ventilation? We touched upon that, obviously, the mechanical ventilation, but is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Sure. Our needs for ventilation come from many different things. We need mechanical ventilation if a home doesn't allow for cross ventilation, for putting windows in the right places. A home needs more mechanical input if it's not designed for the climate. For example, the home you saw in New Mexico, it had what we call a sun bump that was inset from the edge of the roof just the right amount to take in winter sun and block summer sun because of working with the angles. And the rest of the building had a 4-foot overhang, which is typical for us. That's like having a great big sun or rain hat instead of wearing a plastic raincoat.
Right. I remember you showing us that and talking about the roof, and because you did get snow right in that area that you were in New Mexico, and that even with the snow and all that moisture, that 4-foot overhang prevented the buildup of moisture on the wall enough just by that 4 foot. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then the wall itself, when you have what Ron was calling breathable materials, let's call it a vapor open system. It's made with materials like clay that can absorb many times their weight in moisture, suck it away from wood or anything that might be vulnerable, hold it, and then balance with the natural environment. When the environment gets drier, it releases that. So you can do a vapor open system that's very, very durable, but it has to be done with materials that have this ability to work with whatever nature can throw at it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It'd be nice. Can you just tell us like general regions of the country, what building materials work best in each? So northern, southern, eastern, western, just kind of a general overview.
First of all, we want insulation and mass. Insulation and mass play a role in every region, but they play a different role. In an area like Santa Fe, when you have enough mass in the wall, it can help condition the building very comfortably, because at that high altitude, it gets cold at night, even in the summer, and it's dry all year. And in the winter, we get a lot of sun. So the walls act like a battery. And so at night, in the summer, they take on the cooler temperatures, but it takes several hours for it to make its way through the wall. So then it helps cool the wall during the day, and then it heats up during the day, and it allows it to have a steady, not too cold temperature at night. It's bringing its warmth in while it's busy cooling off for the next day. So that kind of use of mass works very, very well in a high altitude, hot, mixed climate. A lot of mass in a wall is not a good strategy in Alaska.
Yeah.
And there you want a lot more insulation in the balance, but the mass wall can still be helpful in maintaining heat if you're creating the right kind of heat in the house. If you're creating a radiant heat source, it will store in a mass wall. So you can also use mass in a very, very cold climate to be of great benefit. In fact, we've actually built natural homes in 17 states, 4 provinces, et cetera. So in a wide variety of climates. With the light straw clay technique, it's a wet technique and it needs to dry. So doing it in a very wet climate without a very good strategy in place to get it initially dried is not advised. But once it's dry, it has tremendous capacity to store. So back to ventilation, that's a good accompaniment to ventilation, to natural ventilation, is having natural walls that have a lot of storage capacity.
Is the reason that we just don't see more of this type of building is cost? I know here in Orange County, they just build these communities like, Paula, you've seen them. They just put them up in a couple of weeks and you've got like all of a sudden these communities appearing. There's so much demand. There's so much demand for housing. Yes. They churn these houses like insanely fast. And, as cheap as they can make them. Is that really part of the issue, is the cost that just would be unfeasible, especially here in California?
Well, I can tell you a little story.
Okay.
When we first did our first home together in Santa Fe, a developer came by and he was very impressed. He said, well, how much does this cost? And at that time, obviously it costs more to build a handcrafted mass wall house that's going to give you this service. And I said, about $1 a square foot per year, because this house is going to last for several hundred years. Pricing was different there. Yeah. And he thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Was to think about not just initial costs, get your money in, get your money out, but costs throughout the life of the building. Now in Europe, when people used to stay put and, to found a cornerstone of a home, you knew you were passing on to your family for generations and generations. And just as a matter of national pride, if we wanted to create a future of good housing stock for our country that would last our citizens for generations, we wouldn't be judging everything in terms of cost per square foot of initial cost to build, and we would have a different mindset and we'd build differently.
I love that. That's so true. I think rings true with health, right? We're vegan, we eat primarily organic. And when you try to educate someone who's not doing that, the first thing, a lot of them will say is, it's too expensive. It's too expensive to buy organic. And then you're thinking, well, How much do people spend when they get an illness, when they get diagnosed with cancer or any kind of illness like that? They'll take out all their savings, they'll mortgage their home, whatever they have to do to get healthy.
Exactly.
And, right. It's the same thing, right? Prioritizing and realizing it's an investment in you. It's an investment in your health, your children, our planet, and all of that. It's just all full circle.
Yes. And another part of this paradigm that you've brought up is, how much space do I really need to be happy?
Yeah.
And often people will come in, and there's three things: budget, cost, and quality. And for our health, the quality we need to add so we'll be healthy, for me, is non-negotiable. If that's not also a client's first priority, then they're not my client. They should find someone more like-minded to work with. So then we just have cost and size are the two flexible parameters. And if someone is on a budget, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is showing someone how they can get quality space and less square footage than they thought they might need. Yes.
Quality over quantity.
Same with organic food. People eat far too, someone is clearly eating too much and then says organic food is too expensive. You might have them look at what they're consuming.
Right.
It's the same with houses. Exact same. Yeah.
I love that. Well, if you are listening and enjoying this show, this has been brought to you by the Building Biology Institute. They are a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to the holistic science that you can embrace in their seminars, courses, their certification programs. And on their website, they have fact sheets and videos on designing, building, and remediating health supporting structures in harmony with the planetary ecology.
To find out more and become a member, go to buildingbiologyinstitute.org. Once again, buildingbiologyinstitute.org.
And we are here with Paula Baker-Laporte, architect and fellow building biology environmental consultant, among other things. Paula is actually a teacher at the Institute, and we have known her for years and years, and she's just a wealth of knowledge. And we're picking up with ventilation in our homes and natural building.
Paula, a great segue. So can I get the ventilation that I need for my home by just opening the windows?
It depends on, in Los Angeles, theoretically, you could do that because of the climate. Perhaps not because of the pollution, but it really depends on what you're bringing in from the outdoors as well. So what do we do when it's really smoky outside? We have recently installed a ventilation system in our house with souped up filtration so that when we do have a smoke event, we can maintain our health.
Gosh, I know LA. I mean, normally the EPA statistic of indoor air is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outdoor air isn't always true on a polluted day and a smoggy day in LA. And then like we talked earlier about people with allergies, they can't open their windows on certain days, high allergy days and things like that. So we're kind of in a flux if you're, in that situation. So we have a lot of air purifiers throughout our home. Yeah. We don't have a whole house filtration, but we do use portable air purifiers on every floor. We have a 3-story townhouse that we live in. Not a natural built house yet.
That's right.
Soon.
Inch by inch.
We'll talk later.
We'll talk. We're hardwired though, Paula. We got a lot of things going, just not the walls. So our walls, would you call, they're not breathable, or would you call like a stick-built home semi-breathable? And do you still need ventilation if you have breathable walls?
Yes, you still need ventilation because the walls should not be counted on to get your air exchange, just like our skin. Although it does exchange with the environment, we'd be in trouble if we didn't have noses and mouths for the major air exchange in the body. And so the same is true of our homes. Our windows, in a natural sense, our windows are the lungs of the breathing organism for the body, the openings. And then at times now we need life support beyond that. And all homes, whether natural or not, need to have the ability to remove pollution. And pollution comes in the form of, when we bathe or shower, all of that extra vapor. If you're seeing any condensation on your windows at any time during the year, there's too much vapor in the home. It's always hard for the building biology students, and it was hard for me to understand at first that it can be pouring rain outside on a cold day, and If you open have you ever done that? You know, have a shower, your bathroom's mirrors all fogged up, and it's cold and rainy outside, and you open your window and all of the water vapor goes away.
Yeah.
You would think you're bringing in more humid air, but in fact, because it's cold, when it gets into the house and expands, it has more capacity to take the moisture out of the air.
Oh, interesting.
Well, hey, Paula, you mentioned earlier, you talked about HRV. Is there any more information you can provide us around the mechanics of that?
Say someone who actually grew up in a home without one, but didn't have any problems.
You're younger than me, but most of the homes in my day, we didn't have any cooling. We lived in Toronto. It got cold in the winter, and in the mornings, there'd be a ribbon of ice on the inside of the windows because we didn't have double pane glass.
Wow. You were tough.
Well, I was Canadian.
You're built tough. There you
Tough
go.
Canadian.
Yeah. You know, we lived under different circumstances, and those homes really, they weren't very airtight. We got fresh air exchange maybe in ways we didn't want it, but there was enough air running through it. We didn't need as much technical assistance. So a properly built home nowadays probably does need technical assistance unless it's very consciously built as a natural home in a good climate. Even though you're in Los Angeles and I'm in a drier part of Oregon, our climates are simple compared to what most of the country faces. Someone in Florida where it's hot and humid, or
so humid,
or even worse in climates where it's horrible and cold all winter and then horrible and humid all summer and hot.
Yeah. So it's funny. Something we get asked a lot is, you know, are older homes more toxic or less toxic than newer homes? The perception is that older homes are more toxic, but I think because of this airflow that you had in older drafty homes, you know, you did have these toxins getting out more than you do today in the green, tightly sealed buildings.
I see different kinds of problems in older homes and newer homes. So typically to buy an older home, you know, you're going to have some pesticide residue, there's maybe lead paint, there may be asbestos somewhere, and nature has had its time to work its way through every inefficiency and insufficient detail in that home so that it's probably created mold or insect infestations or something along the way. So you have all of that set of problems.
Yeah.
Newer homes, unless they're carefully built with good chemistry, you're going to have a new chemical load and new moisture issues from new construction. People rarely take into account that most new buildings are wet buildings and need to dry out. And
that's a common problem. That they're, because they're always in a hurry, right? There's just always a deadline. So if they get like a rainstorm is that the issue? If it rains during the construction, they just throw it up and say, oh, well, it didn't
you know, every time you use concrete, you're using, you know, there's a lot of water in concrete and it takes longer than, you know, people think concrete dries out in 28 days. It reaches full strength or engineered strength in 28 days, but it can take years to dry out. And what you often see is people pour concrete basement walls and slap drywall on it, which is a form of mold chow. You know, with a paper
mold
back.
chow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So buildings fail, new ones, old ones, and the challenges are different in each.
Paul, Sophie's choice. You have to pick one. You were very diplomatic. You have two options.
Older, new.
What problem would you rather go with? Do you want new or old?
Do you want mold? Do you want pesticides in your carpet or mold in your walls? I'll take neither.
Yeah. Well, that's not saying every new home is moldy. I would look for a home with certain characteristics, whether it was new or old. Where do we see failures? Often in basements and crawl spaces. In fact, I worked on a project in Los Angeles where they could only build a certain size home. It was a demancification, I think it was called, bylaw, so that only so much of the home could be above ground. And since the properties are so expensive, they needed to build a basement to get some of the rooms that for the size home they want. So the problems are built in. So there can be good old homes and there can be good new homes.
You still didn't pick Paula, but that's okay. We're going to let you pass on that one. Let you pass on it.
A good answer. Well, Ron, what was the study from the Silent Spring Institute? They found DDT pesticide that's been banned 40 years ago. They found it in.
They tested 550 homes. I think this was in upstate New York area.
2/3 of the home had DDT still in the remnants. Was that what it was?
Decades later. Yeah.
Yeah. 2/3 of the home's carpet. 30 plus years later, still had remnants of DDT pesticide in the carpet, not to go down a tangent of that. But, you know, you think about babies on the floor and pets on the floor and, you know, you're tracking your shoes and all of that. So, yeah.
So that's a perfect example of something we've banned, but is still amongst us. And you definitely have a higher chance of finding it in an older home, of course.
Right. DDT is these persistent chemicals. It's just crazy. I know the University of Arizona, my alma mater, did a study on dust in the home and found that 60% of the dust is tracked in from the bottom of our shoes. And what was prominent in the dust was lead, DDT, and arsenic. Then that was a recent study. So the fact that we're still tracking that into our homes is crazy.
So the clearly obvious first piece of very valuable, completely free advice to give anyone is make your home a no shoes home.
Yeah, we do it unless we're going out somewhere dressy and I have heels on and my dress is too long. I gotta wear my shoes. I have an exception. No, but it's true. I have my indoor flip-flops. So what I do is I slip out of my shoes, leave them in the garage, and then I just put on my indoor flip-flops. I like to have flip-flops on when I'm walking around the house. I don't wash my floors every day. So I don't want to get... Do you have radiant heating? Did you have radiant heating in your flooring in New Mexico?
Yes, we always put radiant heating in. We rarely use it.
Oh, you do? Okay. It's just for those super cold days. Should they come?
For whoever buys the house next.
Oh, okay.
What are the downsides to installing an HRV or an ERV?
We've looked into many, many different brands, and some of the things you'll find is a cardboard core, so paper core. So right in the core where the heat exchange and energy exchange is happening, there's mold-prone materials. What we've also found in a lot of the cores is that biocides are used because of the propensity for them to potentially get moldy. So that's one issue. What are the ducts made out of and how are they hooked up? Because there can be problems with what's in ductwork, what's used in all the materials. When HRVs first came out, I thought, well, this is very interesting. And I called up one of the manufacturers and I said, well, okay, you're dependent on this ventilation system. What if it breaks and you don't know it? And he said, oh, you'd know it. I said, well, how would you know it? And he said, because you wouldn't hear it anymore. And you can get some very quiet ones now, but I would contend that that sound of sitting beside a brook and the water is just nature has this way of making the sound of water and it just puts your whole body at ease and adds to that level of delight and relaxation that you're feeling. Well, consider what we do with all the mechanics we're surrounded with. We're surrounded by repetitive mechanical noise, and that's a stressor. So just as sound in nature relaxes us, sound by machines indoors are a stressor. Same as unnatural color, same as, there's nothing that beats the formula of fresh air in nature and its components. And I don't believe that we're yet smart enough to have dissected all of that. It's like, again, let's take a food analogy. You know that NPK thing that you buy a fertilizer and it will say it's mix of those three ingredients. And at one point, we thought we were so clever that we figured out the only three ingredients that nature needs to grow wholesome food. And then we began to realize, or many people, that nature and the way it grows things is much more complex than adding 3-component fertilizers. There's all kinds of beneficial organisms that make for healthier, better, more vibrant food. So even if we don't understand the science behind every soil organism, we can make the assumption that we may get better food in working with nature than in working against nature by spraying the food and putting artificial fertilizers on it.
Yeah. The Roundup and glyphosate and all the pesticides. It's just the GMOs. It's not even food anymore, right? Frankenfood.
Right. Yeah. So I want to bring that back to ventilation. So we've got this perfect formula working out there in nature. And we think that we can take it through all this machinery and spit it out the other end, and that it's going to maintain all those qualities, those subtle qualities, the ion levels, and the various components that make up fresh air. I don't think they're quite the same. We don't feel quite the same, do we?
It's amazing. We have been out so much more, Ron and I, walking and out in nature since coronavirus, because we, used to go to the gym. And that was our workout. And we would go out to the beach or whatever on the weekends, but we were forced to do our daily exercise outside. And it's been amazing. It's funny that we weren't doing it because we live in such a beautiful area. We pay to live here. We know we're not too far from the ocean, and we've discovered these gorgeous hikes and these trails. And no matter what's happening in the day, when we go out for the walk, it just lifts your whole mood. Your entire mood changes. Okay, so to wrap things up with our final question, and for listeners who are saying, gosh, this all sounds great, Paula, but what can I do today to improve my air quality in my home? And especially if I'm in a position where I can't buy a new home, I can't do an extensive renovation, or maybe I even live in a rental and I can't do anything like permanent.
So the good news is that there are many, many things you can do, and every change is worthwhile. That's what building biology teaches us, is that any positive change is worthwhile. The first thing you can do is, most people have fans, stove hoods, etc., but don't use them when they should be. So as I said before, if you take a shower and you see condensation on any surface, you need to get the moisture out of the bathroom so you don't create a mold problem for yourself. Use the fan.
Right.
Or if you have a window and that works, use the window. If you're cooking, get rid of the cooking odors. And if you turn on a fan, remember, it's sucking air out of your house. Nature abhors a vacuum. So where's the replacement air going to come from? Either you tell it where to get that replacement air, or it'll find it. And you can tell it. The way to tell it is to crack a little window. If you're cooking in the kitchen, turn on your fan, and you don't have a fresh air replacement, which most homes by far do not, crack a window while you've got that going. How do you know when it's ventilated? You won't smell the food anymore.
What if you like the food, Paula? What if you want to smell the food?
What if you want that salmon stench?
I want the salmon while I'm eating it, but I don't want it while I'm trying to eat yogurt in the morning.
Okay. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, no. Salmon, no. After the fact, just isn't a good smell. So if you put your vent on, your stove vent, and you don't open the window, what happens?
Depends. Air is pretty smart, like water, and it'll find the path of least resistance. If that path of least resistance happens to be sucking, say, humid outdoor air through an electrical outlet and into your home through your dirty walls that have DDT in them, that's where you'll be getting your replacement air, whether you like it or not.
Oh, gotcha.
If you open a little window, it's going to say, oh, this is easier, and it's going to come in there.
I gotcha. Okay. So as an architect, is the code for bathrooms, you either have a fan or a window? Is that the code? Okay.
Yes. And in different places, they may insist on mechanical, even if there is a natural, which I always do anyhow, because sometimes either you can't open a window or you're just the air outside is, the wind's blowing in the wrong way. So having that kind of assistance is a positive step forward always.
Yeah. People have mold. I mean, that's a common, and obviously there's mildew and then there's mold, but that's so common in the bathroom, around the tub area, battling with that. And I think you're right. I think people aren't really realizing the importance of just ventilating that after a hot shower.
And here's some more pointers. It depends what's in the house. If you have a lot of toxins in the house, you need more ventilation to dilute it. So what are you bringing in terms of your cleaning products? Are you using air fresheners or anything like that? So don't bring the toxins into the house.
Please stop bringing toxins into your home. Air fresheners do not freshen your air. They do not clean your air. They pollute your air generally. They add more chemicals to your air. And any more tips there?
There are standalone filters that are excellent and will really make a difference in the air quality in your home.
Absolutely. We have lists of those on our website, and we've tested every major brand. We've had every major brand, and it's kind of like you get what you pay for when it comes to air purification. But going back to what you said, don't look at it as the upfront cost. Look at it as investment in your health and in your future. Now, would there ever be a possibility of building a clay straw tiny home?
Why not?
Yeah, I was thinking about that while we were talking, because you were talking about how much space do we really need? You realize this when you move, right? When you move and you move into your new place and nothing's unpacked, and you're like, wow, I'm fully functioning with this one box. How is this possible? It always happens. And you're like, what is all the other stuff that I have? Do I really need it? So the tiny house movement is really amazing. It's giving people financial freedom. And I have seen some sustainable, eco-friendly companies. I think Escape Homes, I don't know if you're familiar with them. Escape Homes, they build healthy, sustainable tiny home and RV and vacation homes. They're pretty great.
One of the things we have Robert has developed is what we call the Ben. It's a backyard eco nest, because how many people need an extra room for something. And why
yeah.
not just have a beautiful, natural, modest sanctuary to do whatever that is, massage studio, yoga practice, office.
Oh, it would be built on site, right?
It's prefabricated, but with
okay.
the kinds of materials that we use. So with a natural
Wow.
wall panel and a timber frame. I think that there's probably something posted on our website. We did put it out. So if anyone's interested, they can just email us and we'll put them on our mailing list. It's econesthomes.com.
econesthomes.com.
If you just Google Econest, it should come up along with the diaper company.
Fun facts about Paula. So Paula, you walk the walk. Literally, you create healthy, sustainable homes, but you also grow your own food, right?
Yes, that's my sanity.
It's your sanity, but most people probably don't know this about you. At one time, you had your own food truck? You had your own food truck?
A food truck.
When I finished architecture school, a long, long time ago, and worked in the field for about a year, became totally disillusioned, and I decided to pursue my other love, which was food. So myself and a girlfriend opened our business called Movable Feast, and we had a purple catering van.
Wow.
We did nuclear rallies and all the stuff that was around there, and we were Toronto's only health food catering van.
Wow.
And that was fun. But then I got serious about architecture again and have never opened another food business, but have remained a dedicated health foodie.
There's something about growing your own food and the taste, right? The way it tastes.
You don't have to take the vitamins, you feed it to your plants and eat the plants. So it's you make sure they're getting their nutrition.
Wow. That is so full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle moment. Well, thank you. I hope we have loved having you, Paula. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and for being a part of the Building Biology Institute, which you can go to and visit at buildingbiologyinstitute.org. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the show as much as we have. Be sure to tune in next week to find out what the heck is going on in your home. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.